Hey everyone, so this is going to be how I teach you guys how to set up your print page margins and your registration marks if you are a Windows user. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is for the StarCraft Solo. So I'm going to share my screen here now and take you guys over to StarCraft. Now, whenever you guys go into StarCraft, you guys want to make sure you guys are on the most up-to-date version in order to be able to get the same exact settings as me or to see the same things that I see. So I'm on the version 1.017. Make sure you guys are on that. You guys can go to help and you guys can go to about StarCraft Create to be able to see this version here. You guys can see right here, it shows the version 1.017. Now, if you guys don't see this, we'll just go ahead and go into a new page and I will show you guys where you guys can find this. Now, if you guys go to Miss Sandy's page, this is, I know it's going to be hard to find the URL. So if you guys need it, please let me know. I will send it to you guys, but I have it saved onto my computer under my favorites. So if you guys go here, she is one of the creators of the Create software for the Solo. Now, you guys will find more of her on the Facebook groups. If you guys are on any of the StarCraft Solo Facebook groups, she will be on there. She is honestly a really nice person. And she has like a whole blog page on everything Solo. So I will cover some pointers here where you can find more information. Honestly, just by going to her page, you guys can get any of the most up-to-date and most current versions for your Mac or your PC. So whichever Windows or Mac you guys have, you guys would just click on the section 3, StarCraft Create for PC and Mac. And then whichever version you have, either Windows or Mac, you would click on there and you would just follow the steps to update your program and make sure you close out of it before you do so. Okay, anything else, like as far as any tips and tricks or anything else that you guys need help with, go and come and click on her page, because even the Facebook groups like 1, 2, 3, and 4, all these Facebook groups, she has them linked here, so you can automatically click on one and it's going to take you to this group. And I can honestly just click through each one so you guys can see what the name of them are. It's StarCraft Solo School. And then we have the Solo Software 101 group. There's 4 of the major groups, and then this one, Solo and Create for Beginners. So I do recommend you guys are all in all 4 of these groups in case you guys need help with anything else, okay? So jumping back, now that we know how to update our software, I'm going to jump back to the Create program. And anything you see here is your recent projects. So just like Cricut or maybe Silhouette, I'm not sure, I don't use a Silhouette, but you will see any recent projects here. These are just my last previous ones. If you don't have any recent projects, you won't see anything here. So just disregard if you see a blank. Now, to go in and start a new project, for example, I have a piece of vinyl for my printable HTV that I'm going to be printing on. Depending on your size of your paper or your size of your vinyl or the size of your printable HTV or anything, any type of media that you are using, whether that's cardstock paper, a roll of vinyl, or anything, you want to make sure that you set your mat size, which is your media size. If you are coming from Silhouette, I know that there is a mat size and a media size, and then Cricut doesn't really have any of that. You just open up a blank canvas and you work on it, and then you go to the next step, and that's it. But here you would go to new project and you would set your mat size as whatever size paper you have. So if I'm using an 8.5 by 11 piece of vinyl or anything like that, or a paper, I will set my mat to 8.5 by 11. In this case, I'm going to act like I'm using a piece of printable vinyl for my Echo Solvent transfers, and I'm going to leave it at 11 by 13. Okay, so we're going to do 11 by 13, and then you can just type in 11 and 13 here. And then you can also go to custom, and you can just make your own preset. If you want to save this, you just go to name, and then you would save this project under whatever project you want to name it. So if we want to name it Beverly's Designs or whatever, we'll name it, but you don't have to name it now. You can do it later. And then we'll hit OK, and then you'll realize that up here it will show Beverly's Designs. Okay, so first things first that you guys might see different, you might be wondering, hey, I'm not noticing, or why don't I have this print margins around my sheet or anything like that. And you're like, okay, well, why is it cutting off? Well, anytime that you import an image and you bring it into Create, if you are actually not on inside, I should say, if you're not inside your print margins, which is this dotted line around, that means your paper is going to be cut off. So your design is going to print halfway off and halfway on because you're using the wrong size paper for printing, but yet your mat size is bigger. So in this case, your print margin is here, but then you can see your actual paper size is bigger. So when you're putting your design in the middle, it's going to get half cut off because of this print margin. Anytime you see a print margin, you have to make sure everything that you are printing is inside your print margin. That's so important. If you don't, that is the reason why a lot of the times people are having issues with their images cutting off and they're not understanding because this is all new. It's not like Cricut. It's so different. So remember, what you will have to do is make sure your registration marks are on and make sure that your print margins are on. If they're not on, it's going to show just like a blank page. If they're on, you'll do print margins and registration marks. Now, if you still turn on your registration marks and you're still not seeing them on your mat, it's because probably you have to bring in an image first. And once you bring in your image, the registration marks are going to be around your actual design. So let's go ahead and talk about registration marks first and how to fix those registration marks. Now, I will say that mine are super small and tiny, like you guys can see here. The reason why I have them this small is because I want to have the maximum space for me to print and be able to cut as much as I can. And so that way, if I want to fill up this paper up to the edge, I will do that because I want to take full advantage. After us having Cricut for so long, for those that have had a Cricut or know about what I'm talking about, we tend to not be able to always print all these little pieces because Cricut never allowed us. But guess what? With the Solo, you can. So you're welcome. You're going to love this method. So usually when you bring in your registration marks, they're going to be super big like this. They're going to be like the bigger L shapes. And if you guys don't know what a registration mark is, just like Cricut, you would get that big old black square around your page, and that's like a registration marks. Well, guess what? With the Solo, they're way smaller. They're like very tiny, itty bitty registration marks if you make them this small like me, and they actually are perfect. So we'll go into cutter settings, and then this is what you want to adjust yours to. Remember, I am using a Windows computer. You should be using a Windows computer too if you're watching this video. And you want to go ahead and do your mark type, leave everything exactly the same. You will be able to use the exact same settings as I am if you're on the same version that I am, and if you have a Windows computer. So you should not have any issues. If you do, just message me, but you should be able to set everything exactly the same as mine. So you can pause and then adjust them. Now, if you had the mark offset around your design, that's because you're not going to see your registration marks come in until you bring an image in. So then you will see those registration marks around your design. Why do I not like to use that? I don't like to use the registration marks around my design because that means that it's only going to be around that specific design. And then when you have multiple images, how are you going to be able to technically print and cut multiple images if you have registration marks only around one image? So this is when you would have to change it to your full page. So I have my mark inset around print bounds. So print bounds is that dotted square around, and they're inside that square. If you put them around your page, they're actually going to be outside of your square. So that means they're not going to print because anything that's outside that dotted line is not going to print. So it's very, very important for you to make sure that they're around your print bounds, not page bounds. Print bounds is outside the printed line. Sorry, page bounds is outside the printed line. Print bounds is inside the printed line. And then the offset around design is going to be around your actual image. So this is why it's important to do it around your print bounds, not page bounds. Okay. So now that I did that, of course, this changed to 5 millimeters, but it's exact same as this. So just keep in mind that you would just put the same number down here. And then your jog distance, I don't know what that means, but just leave it the same and you should be fine. I'm going to hit save, and you shouldn't have to actually go in and change any of this once you do it once, unless you want to adjust something in the future, you know where to go. But you have this video for reference. Okay, so now what we're going to do is make sure that we adjust our print margins, because now that we know that our registration marks are going to be itty bitty and give us the maximum space, now we have to go in and be able to adjust our print margins, because we don't want our image to be cut off. Because remember, I'm using an 11 by 13 size paper or vinyl. So therefore, we're going to go to File, Print Setup. Okay, your printer should already be installed to your computer. It should already be connected to your computer via Wi-Fi or your USB cord for it to show up here. So then we'll do drop down, and I'm going to choose mine. I renamed my printer Echo Solvent printer so I know which one it is, not just looking at the number, but I have the actual name of it. And you notice how it's on 8.5 by 11. Well, because it is on 8.5 by 11, that is why this size of the print margins are smaller, because it's detecting a different size paper, and we don't have that paper. So I'll go to Properties. And then I'm going to go to Paper Tray, because anytime you're printing bigger than an 8.5 by 11, if you have the 15,000 printer, you know that you can't use your cassette tray to print a bigger size sheet. It's only for 8.5 by 11 or smaller. And then your paper tray, which is in the back, which is your rear tray, it will allow you to print anything bigger, up to 13 by 19, because that's the biggest we can print on the 15,000 wide format printers. So I'm going to do Paper Tray. And then I'm going to do my document size. This is where you're going to be very important. You need to pay attention to. If you want to choose a preset, which is 11 by 17 or whatever, 8 by 10, or any of these other measurements, you can, but just keep in mind that the printer only comes with certain settings, or I guess paper sizes. But let's say you wanted to do a custom size. Let's say you're crazy and you're like, I want to do a 12 by 12. Or I want to do a 12 by 10, or I want to do a 10 by 9 or 10 by 7, whatever. If it's not in the list that you see here, mind you, anything from this right here up, if it's not in that list, then you do have an option to do a custom size. Yes, you can. But there is some downfalls by customizing your sizes versus using a preset that they already have with your printer. And I will tell you here in a minute why. So I made some presets, 11 by 13, 8.5 by 11, and the 11 by 17, like these. These are mine. And then user defined is where you would go to actually click on custom. So when you do actually use user defined, you will just do your paper width and height to whatever size you want. Remember, it just cannot exceed the 47, and it cannot exceed technically the 13 width, which is what your printer can do, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do 11 by 13 and inches, hit OK. Now that I have paper tray user defined, because that's the custom size, that means custom, remember, we're going to do paper type. Now, I always use premium presentation paper matte for my Echo Solvent printing. If you're using something other than that printable vinyl, like what if you're using photo paper or paper or whatever, you can change the setting accordingly. I personally don't use it for anything else. My Echo Solvent printer, I only use it for my printable vinyl. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Premium Presentation Paper Matte, and that's the one that I'm going to stick to. I use color, and here I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to go to more options. This is where you want to make sure you are changed completely over to custom, and I will hit advance. What happens when I hit advance? I'm going to be able to choose a different color profile. Now, this is where you really want to pay attention, because if you don't choose this color profile, your colors might look a little bit duller than somebody else's. And what if we have the same ink, same printer, and you're like, why are mine not coming out the same? Well, it's because you need to change the color corrections or color controls. Your color mode right now is under Epson Vivid, because that's the standard, because your printer is an Epson. And I'm going to change it over to Adobe RGB with 2.2 gamma. And these will stay the same at 0. Now, what happens whenever I go ahead and change it to Adobe RGB? It's just a different color profile, so it's going to give you a higher quality resolution and colors. If you feel like your image is not coming out a certain color, or not coming out like the right blue, like your screen shows like a darker blue and you're printing a lighter blue, then you will need to come in and adjust the contrast and everything here, and colors, density, but that's to each their own. I haven't had issues with mine, so I leave everything at 0. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now, you also want to make sure your bidirectional printing and your mirror is off. A lot of the times these are going to be check marked both whenever it's a new printer or you're getting started. So I will leave that off as well. Okay. And bidirectional printing means that it's just going to print slower. That's technically what it means. So if you have it on and you notice your prints are printing fast and they're having lines because of the printing, that is because you need to turn it off. So turn it off. And then now let me go back to the main, which is what I wanted to talk about next. You notice that I don't have an option to change my quality. Why? You don't have options to change quality because you're using a custom setting. So anytime you're using user defined, which is your custom setting, you won't have options to change your quality. I don't know why. This is just what the printer allows you. And if I go back and change it to an 8.5 by 11, notice how now I can change my quality to high. So if you're using an 8.5 by 11 paper or anything that's already a preset from Epson, like any of these above here, remember, then yes, you will have the options to change the quality. If you're using user defined, you will not have options to change quality, but even standard is fine. I'm okay with that because I'm using premium presentation paper matte. It leaves off a lot more ink. So that's why I have still good quality. Okay. And then now once you did all of these, the same, I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit OK here. And notice how now your paper and your vinyl, sorry. Notice how now your print margins and your registration marks are pushed back to the size of your paper. So automatically just get in the habit, if you're only going to be using it for print and cut, automatically just get into the habit of jumping in here, automatically going to file, page setup or print setup, sorry, and then changing all of that. So whenever you import your image, you're automatically already on and you have everything matching. Okay. If it's off, if your print margins and your paper size is off, that is why you are not having success in printing. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and import, and I'm just going to grab like this Hello Kitty and just bring her in. And let's say I want to make her a little bit smaller. You can either grab her from here and use your shift key, and then you can shrink her down. What happens if you don't use your shift key? It will just be warped. It's distorted, your image. So you can do Control Z, undo it, and then you can bring in shift and then just make it smaller. And then there you go. You can make sure she fits within the registration marks and she's inside your print margins, okay? So if she's touching the print margin here, that's going to be cut off, but everything else will be okay. So you want to make sure she is completely inside both registration and inside the print margins. Well, at least she, as long as she's inside the print margins. Now, she can be very close to the registration mark, and that's fine. It's still going to print and cut. That's no issue. But just know that you want to make sure she's inside the print margins. That's the most important, so she's not cut off. Now, to go ahead and actually do the print and cut, we want to make sure we go to create, which if you're a Cricut user or you come from Cricut, it's technically like your make it button, or I think silhouette is like something else, but it has that same button right there. It's in a different color and it's a different name, but you would just hit create, which is your make it. And then this screen right here, you're just going to ignore. Honestly, the only thing you want to pay attention to is what it's on. So if you have your cut mode on, what you see is what you get. That means that it's going to print and cut as you see it. What you see is what you get. That's exactly the same way it's going to print and cut it. If you have it under origin point, it's going to move everything to the corner because it's wanting to save you as much paper or vinyl as possible, leaving you this open space up here because everything's shifted to one corner. If you use the center point, again, it's just going to center it, but you already have it centered on your paper, so it makes no difference. But if you want to just be in control, just leave it under what you see is what you get. And wherever you place it on your mat or your paper, that's where it's going to print and cut. So just leave it at that. And you also want to make sure you have your use system speed and force, because if you have this off, all of this is going to be great and you're not going to be able to move it. And you're going to be like, why can I control the speed? Why can I change my force? Well, you have to have this clicked on in this screen before you continue to your print and cut screen. Now, you don't have to actually do anything here because this is only if you're going to be cutting this, because you can see this is only the outline of this image. And this is only if you're going to be cutting a basic cut image, just like a regular cut. If you are going to want to print and cut, you have to bypass all of this, go to this tab where it says print and cut, and it's going to take you now to the correct screen. Here you will want to adjust your force. You will adjust your speed. That's it. There's no custom settings like Cricut or the Silhouette where you can just go and say sticker paper, I'm using iron-on vinyl, I'm using this and this. That doesn't exist here. You have to make your own force and your own speed every time. And if you want to save that preset, you can, but you have to make it initially for the first time. You have to make it. So let's say I want to do 20 and then I want to do 9 in speed. That's just me making something up. You would just add here where it says plus, and then I'm going to name it like Beverly setting. And let's say you can call this sticker paper iron on. Beverly's iron on. That's what I'm going to call it. Whatever, iron on. And then you would hit OK. Once I hit OK, you can see that it saves it as a preset now. And now you have it for every single time. Personally, me, I use my Echo Solvent vinyl setting, which I made that. And I use the 19 force and speed at 10. Speed is just how fast your machine is cutting. I think we could keep it the same if you guys want to keep it at 10, but your force is going to be different than mine because it all depends on your blade. How far out is your blade from your actual housing, like the little holder or adapter? You want to make sure the blade is barely peeking out because a little goes a long way. So if your blade is super out, even if you're using a force at 5, it's probably too much pressure because your blade is sticking out too much. So you want to actually leave it barely sticking out. And then I use the 19 in force. That only cuts through the top of my Echo Solvent vinyl, not through the backing. So it's perfect. But that's not always going to be the same for you. So you have to do a test cut, which is completely different. I won't talk about it in this video. But if you need to know how to do a test cut, I can do another video for you guys there. So let's just keep it at whatever works for you. And then you can set the force to whatever works for you. But I will say the speed probably could stay at 10 for both you and I. Now to go ahead and print, we're just going to print. Now, because I already went through this whole settings, you don't have to do it again. You either adjust all your settings from the beginning, like I showed you, or you can just change your paper size. And then now you can change all your settings at the end. But I just do it all at the beginning, so I'm over and done with. So I make sure it's still on that same printer. If I hit properties, you can see everything is the same. I already changed all that at the beginning, so I'm not going to go over it again. And then, yeah, you would just hit OK, which I'm going to hit cancel, but you would hit OK. And then it would start to print. And then it's printing. It's done. Your paper should also be cut down to the exact same size as your vinyl that you're setting on here. So if you set 11 by 13, that vinyl has to be cut down to that exact same size. And the reason for that is because a lot of the times when people are cutting, they need to make sure that their mat size and their paper size are the exact same, just like I showed you here in the system. But also when you're printing, it needs to be the same size, because if you actually cut anything bigger, even 1 inch bigger than what you actually set it to, your printer might print it off and you're going to be like, why is it printing off? Well, it's because your paper that you cut down is not the same size that you said it was. So those are just some tips and tricks on how to adjust, print, and set up your whole printing cut process on the STARCRAFT Solo. I hope that helps. One last tip that I will tell you guys is that with the Solo or STARCRAFT Create system, you actually put your mat or your piece of paper or your vinyl or your media, whatever it is, it actually has to be lined up to the bottom right side. So this is my right side. Once I look at it this way, this is my right hand. It's on the bottom right side. And that is where you would set up your paper here or your vinyl, whatever it is that you're using. And if this is only for print and cut, of course, because that's how it works. Now, I know on the Cricut, if you guys are coming from Cricut or Silhouette, I know that you guys will adjust it or set it up here on the top left. Not with the Solo. Solo is the bottom right. You have to line it up to these lines as well. Make sure it's not going past it, just like the Cricut or the Silhouette, but instead of doing it up here, top left, you're doing it bottom right. And then you would just feed your mat, and then it would start actually cutting on the corner here. It's so completely different. I love my Solo. I hope you guys do too. And I hope this has helped you guys. Bye. See you guys next time.